Hello, Michael. The question for today says, if pure consciousness is only aware of itself and nothing else, what is grace? Does it act or play a role in the lives of the jivas in any way?
Good question. This is a very subtle point. That is, what we actually are, our real nature is just pure awareness, pure consciousness. That means consciousness that is not aware of anything other than itself. But the nature of that is, as Bhagavan, in the first paragraph of Nāṇ Ār, what Bhagavan says is extremely significant. That is, he says, Sakalal jivagalum dukumem vadindri epodum sukumai iraka viramadalam. Since all sentient beings, all jivas, want or like to be happy always without what is called misery. That's one reason. Second reason, yavakum taniditalaye parama priyam irapadalam. That means, since for everyone, the greatest love is only for oneself. And but only for oneself, to taniditil means, in this, it literally means in oneself, but in this context, in English, we would say for oneself. Taniditil means for oneself. Taniditile, that is with that A on it, that is an intensifier that gives the sense of only. But he uses that intensifier twice, not just taniditile, but taniditile. That is, by doubling that intensifier, he very strongly, we all have greatest love for ourselves. Whatever else we may love, we love it to the extent that we think it's going to make us happy. We love our wife, we love our children, we love our parents. Why? Because we believe they're contributing to our happiness. But if instead of making us happy, if they make us unhappy, sooner or later our love for them is going to wane. Because we have greater love for ourselves than we have for anything else. That is our very nature. We cannot avoid that. So why do we have that greatest love only for ourselves? Because love for ourselves is our very nature. What we actually are is pure awareness. Pure awareness naturally loves itself, because awareness and love are one and the same thing. In their pure form, they're one and the same thing. So that pure self-love is the very nature of pure awareness. And then in the next clause, he says, Priyatiku sukume karanam adalalam. And since happiness alone is the cause of love, what he means by that, happiness alone is the cause of love, we love those things that make us happy. So if the things that make us happy, we like those things. The things that make us unhappy, we dislike those things. So happiness is the cause of love. The reason he says this is, we have greatest love for ourselves. And what do we love? We love to be happy. That indicates that we ourselves are happiness. That's one reason. But then he goes on to say, so he's given three reasons. Then in the next clause, he gives another reason. He doesn't express it as a since clause, but as but in another way. He says, Manamatra nidrayil dinum anubhavikam tan subhavamana achukate adeya tane tan aridal vendam. That means, in order to attain or obtain that happiness, which is one's own svabhava, that means one's own real nature, manamatra nidrayal dinamanubhavikam, one's own real nature, which one experiences daily in sleep, which is devoid of mind. Sleep here means dreamless sleep. In dreamless sleep, there's no mind, but we're perfectly happy. That is another reason why, that's another reason for concluding that happiness is our real nature. If happiness was not our real nature, how could we be happy in sleep when we're when we don't have anything, we don't even have the mind, we're separate from everything, we alone exist in sleep without anything else, but we're perfectly happy because happiness is our real nature. That's why he says, tan subhavamana chukote. So happiness is our very nature. So in order to attain that happiness, what must we do? Tanne tan arido vendam. It's necessary for oneself to know oneself. We have to know what we actually are, then we will experience ourselves as happiness. So the reason I bring in this paragraph here is that Bhagavan indicates here that love is our real nature. We have greatest love for ourselves, and we have love for ourselves because we are happiness, and because we are happiness, we naturally have love for ourselves. So love for oneself is our real nature. So pure awareness always has love for itself. So though since in the view of pure awareness, there is nothing other than itself, it loves itself and itself alone. But in our view, we seem to be something separate from pure consciousness. But in the view of pure consciousness, we are nothing other than it. So pure consciousness loves us as itself. And since it loves us as itself, what it loves is just to be as it is. So it loves us to be as we are. So its love for us to be as we actually are is what manifests in our view as grace. That is, grace is the infinite love that we as we actually are have for ourselves as we actually are. So that grace is always operating in our life. For us, it seems to be some sort of divine power or something, but actually it's nothing but the inherent love that we have for ourselves as we actually are. And that another wrong idea people generally have about grace is that grace is something that comes from God, and God is something outside us. But God is not outside us. God is that which is shining in our heart as I. And God and his grace are not different. So grace is that clarity of self-awareness, but is always shining in our heart as I, and is always drawing us back within. That is, if we yield ourselves to grace, grace will suck us back within, and we'll be absorbed back into the source from which we rose. What is obstructing grace is only our liking to go outwards. So long as when we have a liking to go outwards, what are we doing? We are misusing grace, because grace is love itself. So when we have a liking for something other than ourselves, that is a distorted form of the love that we have for ourselves. Why do we love other things? Because we think they contribute to our happiness. So our love for other things, our liking for other things, our desire for other things is nothing but a distortion of the love that we have for ourselves. So ultimately, everything comes down to grace. It is our misuse of grace, but it is by misusing grace that we are going outwards. But grace isn't satisfied with us going outwards, because we're not, so long as we're going outwards, we're dissatisfied. What drives us to go outwards is our dissatisfaction. So grace is slowly working within us, helping to purify our mind and thereby draw us back within more and more and more. So grace is, the importance of grace cannot be exaggerated. Bhagavan used to say, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. It is grace that drew us to this path. It is grace that gives us the liking to follow this path. And eventually, it is when we turn within and see what we actually are, we will see that what we actually are is itself grace, that infinite love, and we'll be swallowed by that. As Bhagavan says in verse 101 of Āruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai, he prays very beautifully, like ice in water, melt me as love in you, the form of love. So just like a piece of ice is nothing other than the ocean. But so long as it's frozen, it seems to be something separate. But when it melts, it merges back into the ocean, into its source. Likewise, this jiva, this ego, this separate individual, is nothing but that infinite ocean of grace, of pure love. But so long as it's looking outwards, it's misusing its love by directing it towards other things in the form of desire. So we need to give up that outward going movement of our desire and direct all our desire back towards ourselves. We must cultivate that desire or love just to be as we actually are, to turn within and to merge back in our source.
Yeah, so when they say know yourself, know thyself, we could say love thyself. Is the same.
Yeah,
love yourself
yes.
is turning within.
We can know ourselves only when we love ourselves.
Yeah.
Truly speaking, we always know ourselves. But instead of knowing ourselves just as I am, we now know ourselves as I am Carlos or I am Michael. So we are loving ourselves, but not, or we are knowing ourselves, but not knowing ourselves as we actually are. And because I know myself as I am Michael, I have so much love for Michael because I mistake him to be myself.
Yeah, exactly. Our love is confused.
Yeah, that is also why Bhagavan said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. Bhakti means love. It is our misuse of our love that is allowing our mind to go outwards, driven by its Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya vasanas is just as distorted form of that love which is our own real nature. Instead of directing that love back towards ourselves as we actually are, because we wrongly mistake this person to be ourselves, we love this person. And as this person, we have so many needs. We need air to breathe, we need water to drink, we need food, we need clothing, we need shelter, we need so many things. And on top of all that we need, we want security. Because I may have enough food for today, but what about for tomorrow? So we want to build up a balance in our bank account. And the more we have in our bank account, the more dissatisfied we are, the more we want. So the very nature of ego, the very nature of desires can never be satisfied, and they always are multiplying. But that's why we need to change our direction. Instead of allowing our mind to flow outwards towards all these other things that seem to contribute to our happiness, we need to turn our mind back within and discover ourselves to be the happiness that we are seeking. There is actually no happiness in any of the things of the world. Even if you have $1 billion or $100 billion, like some people have, are these centibillionaires, are they satisfied? No, they still want more.
Yeah, that's true.
And money is just one example. It's the same with everything. It's the same with anything we may desire, whether it's learning or whether it's loving relationships or whatever it is. Dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego, because what we actually are is infinite happiness. So nothing short of infinite happiness can satisfy us. So as ego, we are always dissatisfied, because we are separated from our own real nature, which is infinite happiness.
Yeah, and so you said that grace is so. I mean, it influences our lives. For example, in the way of presenting us or giving us some teachings, for example, or giving us the liking to follow some teachings, or.
Grace is what we otherwise call God or Guru. Grace manifests. Grace is nothing but the love that we have for ourselves as we actually are. We as we actually are have for ourselves as we actually are. That manifests as grace. Grace manifests as God and as Guru. As God, grace is ordaining the fruits of our karmas and so on, in such a way that will be beneficial for us. And as Guru, he comes to turn our attention back within. So it's all, everything is the act of grace.
So he planted that seed, for example, the first seed when, I don't know, when some past lives when we started to put into question the reality of the world, for example, that first seed.
Even long before that, when we were still seeking happiness outside, still using might is right and being dissatisfied. However much I tried to squeeze happiness out of this world, using all my power and all my, I'm still not satisfied. So because of this, it is dissatisfaction is what drives us on. So first we are seeking happiness only in things external to us. Then we find we can't find happiness in those things. So we think, okay, there must be something lacking. Then we think, oh, there's a God. So if I have the blessings of that God, then I'll be able to achieve the happiness I want. So we start praying to that God, but we're still wanting those other things. So we pray to God for, give me health, give me wealth, give me power, give me lordship over the universe or whatever. Because the things that we think will make us happy, we ask God for those, but still we're dissatisfied. Whatever God may give us, we're still dissatisfied. Then we begin to think, oh, God is so kind to me that he's giving me all these things. So rather than all these other things, God himself is the source of happiness. So I don't want anything else. I only want God. Only if I achieve, if I reach God, if I whatever idea it is, go to heaven and live with God, or attain union with God, or whatever the idea may be, God alone is the source of happiness. So we begin to love God for the sake of God. But we're still taking God to be something other than ourselves. So then God has to appear as Guru and says, the God you are seeking is not outside you. You yourself are that. Tattvamasi. Turn within and see yourself, and then you will know God. So when Bhagavan says grace is the beginning and the middle and the end, the beginning doesn't mean the beginning, just the beginning of our following our present path. The beginning from a time long before we even thought of any spiritual path, or were even beginning to become religiously inclined. Grace was doing its work.
In a sense, it pervades everything.
Everything. Because what is grace? Grace, the question is, if pure consciousness is only aware of itself and nothing else, what is grace? The answer is grace. Pure consciousness alone exists. Grace is nothing but pure consciousness. So pure consciousness and grace, pure consciousness and grace are just different descriptions of ourself as we actually are. What we actually are is grace. What we actually are is pure awareness. They're not two different things. They're one thing, and that one thing is ourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true that we separate things like into different, love, knowledge, awareness, pure awareness, grace. But
there is only one thing. But as soon as we rise as ego, we separate that one thing into all the innumerable things of this universe. When we see this universe, whatever we may be seeing, whether we're seeing stars or planets, or we're seeing tables and chairs, or Mozart's music, or beautiful sunset, or we're enjoying philosophical ideas, whatever it is, what we are seeing is only ourselves and nothing other than ourselves, because nothing other than ourselves actually exists. But so long as we rise as ego, instead of seeing ourselves as one, we see ourselves as many. Seeing ourselves as many is ignorance. Seeing ourselves as one is knowledge. Simple as that. And to see ourselves as one, we must see nothing other than ourselves. So long as we see anything other than ourselves, we're seeing ourselves as many, because all those other things are nothing other than ourselves.
Yes. Okay, Michael. So thank
you
very much.
The function of grace is to make us see ourselves as we actually are, as the one and only reality.
And also that aspect, that cheat aspect of the ego is, I mean, it's here. It's the ego is serving, using that aspect cheat to see this world. So I don't know if that is because, in a way, that's grace operates through that borrowed consciousness into this life or into this world. I don't know. The wording is not very precise.
Grace is what we actually are. Everything that we see is nothing other than that. So Maya itself is grace. But Maya is when we misuse grace to know things other than, to rise as ego and thereby know other things, we call it Maya. When we yield ourselves to grace as it actually is, by turning back within, then Maya merges back into grace. Because Maya is nothing other than grace. It's a misuse. Maya is a misuse of grace.